Hello, this is the non-dual lectionary for the 18th Sunday after Pentecost in year C. And we've got a little tricky one, I think. Not so much tricky as on its face, like just very dualistic, very much just you know, a story. Um, but I think there's a good nugget in there. So let's get right to it. We are still in Luke, since we're in year C. Lots of Luke. And it's Luke chapter 17, verses 11 through 19. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 men with a skin disease approached him. Keeping their distance, they called out, saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. When he saw them, he said to them, Go and show yourselves to the priests. And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus asked, Were not 10 made clean? So where are the other 9? Did none of them return to give glory to God except this foreigner? Then he said to him, Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well. So, like I said, on its face, it's like a healing story. Jesus heals people. Great. And then something about like, it's a Samaritan, right? It's an outsider. That's the only one who kind of recognizes and thanks. So, a message about like, hey, in group, out group. Okay. But I think there's a nugget we can grab from, maybe two nuggets. And the second one is kind of related to that last point, but two nuggets that I think glean out of that we can glean from this in that sort of non-dual perspective. And I think what we're seeing here is, I've talked about Jesus as teacher, exemplar, model, all those sorts of things. I think this story illuminates a little bit of teacher as Jesus as teacher, but also like the illumination comes from also the people, the men healed, right? And again, like a little bit of that unlocking key that I keep coming back to of like the outside and the inside are not all that separate, right? So one thing that jumps out at me here, right, is first of all, the one thing to understand, I think that's it comes through in the story, right, is that the fact that these men had this skin disease meant that they were excluded, right? They were going to go then show themselves to the priest. That's what Jesus tells them, right? Because the priest could then confirm that they didn't have the skin disease, and then they're back and able to be part of the community. They're back able to go into the temple and all of that. Um, and so the healing then, right? Like there's one way of seeing this whole story as like the healing comes for them, but immediately then it raises the question, and it's not a question they try to answer, it's just a question that we answer, all of us. What were you in it for? Right? You say you want this healing. They all did, right? Jesus, have mercy on us. You say this want this healing, what for? And 9 of them go on to show themselves to the priests, right? What were they in it for? And one way of reading this, right, is they were in it for themselves. It was their psychological self, their small self that wanted this healing, wanted things to be better for them, right? Wanted a better self. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, hey, if you were excluded from, polite, not just polite, if you were excluded from society, if you were an outsider because of this, you want it to be improved. But it's not the whole thing, right? And it's not manifesting your true nature, right? True nature here is may also want something in a way, right? Not in a desiring way, but in like the phrase I'm using lately that works for me is like the moving toward life. Not trying to move towards life or deciding to move towards life, but just moving where life goes, right? Life goes this way. This is where life is going, so I'm going that way. And there's no separation even between the two. It's not this and then that, or this and then I decide that. Just that's what's happening, right? And so again, like one way of reading this is like a, what happens internally here, right? Or what's the non-separation between the internal and external here is something like, where does this drive come from, right? The have mercy on us to be healed. And the drive can come from, I want to be better, right? My small self, my psychological self wants to be better, wants to be more complete, wants to be whole, wants to do good in the world. Great. All nothing wrong with any of that. But it's just not true nature moving where life goes. But one of them, right? It is where true nature is where life goes. And that's the one who then says, I wasn't it's just revealed. Like it just shows up that they weren't in it for that. And that's not a decision necessarily to make either, but it just shows up, right? When they see they're healed, they go, oh. And so they turn back instead of going to get what they want out of it, right? Which is what Jesus tells them to do. Comes back and says, thank you, right? Why? Because they just recognize that's where life is going, right? That that movement, the desire to the not even the drive to be healed was because it was a drive of where life was going. So Jesus comes back, they come back to Jesus and go, I recognize that you, Jesus, are also, are also where life is going, and this is where I'm going, and we're all in it then, right? Like just recognition of that. And then the pointing out that it's a Samaritan, right, is just like, hey, you know, little tip on the iceberg there of like, hey, group identity has nothing to do with this, right? No matter what group religious identity, being the right type of person in any way has nothing to do with this, right? So the glory to God and your faith has made you well here. He doesn't say the others turn back to being sick, right? It's not that, their lack of faith then made them sick again, except that wellness may be different, right, from being clean. So your faith has made you well is something like, you're, mm, you're moving where life goes. And the fact that this revealed the recognition that that's what your drive is there more so than your drive to satisfy your psychological self, even in good ways, has made you well in a way that is deeper than just being clean from a disease, which is huge, right? But it's like there's a deeper wellness that Jesus just recognizes and says, your faith, and I'm using faith as that stand-in then, right? For like your manifestation, living where life goes as true nature has made you well in that deeper way. Um, and so like, what a cool little story then, right? Again, um, and also, I mean, I think to me, there's something there about like, yeah, there's 10. Well, like why not just two, right? Like that gives you the contrast that you want to, but the point also is like, this is rare, right? This is, um, if you're moving this way through life, it's not going to be a common thing that you see the recognition in others. But seeing the recognition in others doesn't matter either, right? And this is the really cool thing, I think, in the end, to bring it all the way back around, the other nine are still healed too, right? Like the movement of life is in them as much as it's in the one who comes back and recognizes it. So it's more like, hey, this is what is in everyone and everything all the time. You recognize it, and so Jesus recognizes it in the Samaritan there, and the Samaritan recognizes it. There's a mutual recognition through everything. They're all moving. But hey, it's happening regardless, because hey, fundamentally, this is just what is.